on the plains of Chalmette, a makeshift army of regular infantry, free men of color, Native Americans, privateers, farmers, and shop owners raised their arms to face the mightiest army on earth.
The British were also aware that the majority of American armies was made of militia, and militia tended to run.
It is a battle of monumental importance for a young United States.
They shall not sleep on our soil.
I don't think that another American general could have succeeded.
General Andrew Jackson forces martial law on the terrified citizens of New Orleans.
It's probably one of the smartest moves that the general has made.
The Ursuline nuns ask for divine help.
That is the statue that they pray to. They put that statue on the altar.
Fire! Their convent trembles from the sounds of war.
I'm going to tell you one thing here that I will take to my grave. That field was littered with the dead and dying.
It is a resounding victory that shocks the world and becomes a turning point in American history. It is a miracle on the Mississippi. The War of 1812 has been called the Second War of American Independence, with American seamen being impressed on the high seas and forced to man British ships. A young United States declares war. Americans fight the British along the Canadian border. The British invade and burn the capital in Washington, only to suffer defeat at Baltimore, which inspires the Star-Spangled Banner. Then the British fleet and army move toward the Gulf of Mexico and New Orleans.
It was a very valuable target as far as the United States was concerned. It was the western United States' largest city, and it had the port that controlled the Mississippi River and by extension the entire continental interior.
The United States gained New Orleans in the Louisiana Purchase. Well, at this time in history, with the defeat of Napoleon, only one country in the world thinks that the Louisiana Purchase was legal, and that's the United States.
The task of stopping the expected British invasion falls to General Andrew Jackson. Jackson already had a long-running hatred of the British that began during the Revolutionary War.
Andrew himself appears to have acted in a very informal way as a scout and a dispatch rider for forces operating in the Carolinas. In fact, he and his brother were captured by the British Army and imprisoned.
And that led to an encounter with a British officer.
He practically lifted me out of my chair, and he swore at me. He said, "You young rebel," he said, "now you'll clean the mud off my boot." But I said, "Sir, I may be a prisoner, but I expected to be treated like one." When I said that, the next thing I heard the ring of his saber when it came out of the sheath. I still carry the scar on my hand and forehead from the cut.
Jackson's two older brothers and his mother died during the War of Independence.
And every time I see those scars on my hand and on my forehead, I'm reminded that I owe them a debt. And it seems that Providence has provided me that opportunity.
The British fleet is first spotted off the coast of Mobile, Alabama. Here, their large ships could offload troops and equipment and march overland to Baton Rouge and then take New Orleans. But the British lose their flagship to stiff resistance at Mobile's Fort Bowyer. The Royal Navy withdraws and decides on an amphibious landing near New Orleans.
And the problem then became, contending with Louisiana's topography, very shallow inland waterways that didn't admit British ships, and they had to just find the most expeditious route into the city itself.
General Jackson prepares his defense of the city of New Orleans and its diverse population, and he worries that some citizens may be sympathetic to the invading British.
I just think that they have some dubious attitudes about us being able to hold them at bay when they arrive.
Jackson declared martial law on December 16, 1814, and essentially it imposed a curfew, but it effectively made everyone in New Orleans subject to Jackson's military authority. It turned New Orleans into a military encampment.
By clamping down on some of the discontent and unifying the population, it's probably one of the smartest moves that the general has made.